Okay, today I'm just outside of Huddersfield with Brian Chappell, aka Jimmy Justice for people that go on Twitter. Brian, thanks very much for agreeing to talk to me today. So let's cut to the chase. Basically, you're a bookie hater, aren't you?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for coming all the way from Devon to interview me. It's really appreciated. And I want to knock that on the head straight away. Justice for Punters and myself are not bookie haters. In fact, personally, up until about 4 years ago, I was an advocate for the industry because I'd been betting for over 35 years and only ever had one complaint. So this business around we hate bookies is not true. What we do hate is bookmakers that don't trade fairly.
Okay, so just going back to what I said to begin with, we'll go back on that in a minute. People know you better as Jimmy Justice on Twitter, and it's one of my pet hates. As a campaigner, you're not afraid to stand up and be counted, so how come you don't use your proper name instead of a moniker?
Well, if we started again now, I would. But when we first started, we genuinely didn't have a clue how this was going to go. So we went for the Justice for Punters title for the website, and the Jimmy Justice side was just a bit of a joke, really. And certainly, if it wasn't for the business of never change your brand, never change your image, we would change that now, but there's just no point. And I think it is fair to say that most people who show any interest in what we do at all, especially the corporate bookmakers, know that Jimmy Justice is Brian Chappell.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the Justice for Punters group that you run, and tell us a bit about your members and what your game plan is?
Okay, no problem. We started Justice for Punters around 2.5 years ago now, but things started before that, and there was a small group of 3 or 4 of us that had met. Okay, and just to give a bit of background to those people, so me first of all, I had my first bet at about 8 years of age at York Racecourse with my granddad. I was a regular punter while I was still in school. I'm sure the Gambling Commission don't want to know that. And as I've already mentioned, I spent years and years in pubs when people were moaning, saying bookmakers were making a fortune, etc., saying, look, I've had one dispute with a bookmaker over a long period of time. I have far more disputes with my bank, insurance company, etc. That all changed, like I say, 4 years ago. But anyway, I'm a non-pro, okay, but I do take my betting seriously. And I treat 16 runner handicaps like a times crossword. And yeah, no bookmaker is going to make loads of money out of me, but they do have a chance of making money. I've never been a pro. I've never been a person that's turned over big profits at all. So I had no concept of what was going to happen when I actually started taking the online game more seriously 4 years ago. So that's me. Another of the guys, exactly the same, a little bit older than me, so still in his 60s, £20, £15, £10 punter, takes the game seriously. And then we've a couple of guys who I can't really talk too much about because they're industry insiders. And also one chap that I met really early on, which was after I read his book Speaking with Forked Tongues, which was Mick McDermott. So I'd sort of met with these different people to start with. I came up with the concept, and we decided 18 months ago, 20 months ago, to start the website. So where are we trying to go? Well, if I really touch on why we set the site up, and it's not about bookie hating, okay? It's all about fairness, okay? If you do what your license is for, and if you do what you advertise, you're fine. If you don't do that, expect to be challenged. And there are various factors that sort of said to us, we have to try and do something. Not that you know, we're losing our living. None of us are full-time punters. And so we were looking at things. After I'd had this, you know, this account restricted, or this best odds guarantee taken away, and it was all happening, and I was sat watching at the races or whatever, and these large corporate bookmaker PR people were still coming on saying, we've taken a fortune for this, we've taken a fortune for that. And I'm thinking, well, who have they taken it off? Because if anybody shows any ability at all, you get your stakes restricted. So that was one side. But probably bigger than that was all the business with the terms and conditions. And also the thing that really got me going, this is not for all the first small group, but the thing that got me going was the ID abuse. Maybe I am arrogant, maybe I am a gruff, difficult Yorkshireman, but you know, I was trying to get £40 and I was asked for my passport, and then to stand next to my passport and take a selfie next to my passport page. And I went to an ADR and they found for the company and said I couldn't have my £40 unless I provided this passport selfie. Unlucky for them, and this might sound arrogant again, I didn't need the £40. And that really was the thing that got me going, that somebody was saying to me that I was a liar and that I was not who I was, and they were asking for very personal information from me, not for criminal reasons. It's £40 we're talking about. And it was even worse when the ADR found for the company. So, you know, these are things which built up, and awful customer service, hopeless regulation. And so we decided that we were going to try and do something about those things. And I suppose the big one early doors that we did manage to get going was the Competition and Markets Authority investigation. So it's all about fairness. It's not about hating. It's saying, do what you're saying on your tin. Okay, if you're saying you take bets, take bets. I recognise fully that bookmakers are a business and they can't automatically lose 10 and 20 and 30 and 40, 50,000 to one customer each year. But please don't tell me that people betting at £25, £20 are a danger to large corporations. They're not.
Okay, so one body seems to have had a lot more publicity than you, which is the HorseraceBets Forum. What are your opinions on them, and how do they differ from what you guys are trying to do?
Okay, I applied to be on the first HorseraceBets Forum, and to be fair to Simon Rowlands, when I was turned down, we spoke on the phone, and I didn't have a problem with that. You know, at the time we hadn't started Justice For Punters. I had no profile whatsoever, so it did not surprise me. And the only big difference between us is that the HorseraceBets Forum just deal with horse racing, whereas we have positioned ourselves at looking at all aspects of the gambling industry. So that is the major difference. Do we agree on everything? We agree on the vast majority of things. Where we do tend to disagree is how to go about changing things. And I think it is really fair to say that we are much more controversial than what the HBF are at times, and there's a reason for that, in that we are dealing with much wider issues, especially things like problem gambling, etc., and we're dealing with completely different media. It is fair to say that the HBF have a much bigger profile than us in the racing media. There's no question about that. But we have a much bigger profile with the BBC and other major media outlets. But yeah, we're both very supportive of each other.
Now, I understand that, you know, regardless of you sort of being less high profile, you've built up a relationship with the regulators. Can you tell us how you manage that in such a short period of time, and how's it going?
Well, if we're totally honest, We are really surprised that we got through those hallowed doors in Birmingham so quickly. But I think that's where we're so different from our Twitter profile. The Twitter profile is planned, okay, and it's planned to be controversial. It's planned to ruffle some feathers. There's no question about that. But if you're going to get anywhere with regulators, as my professional career taught me, you've got to do more than that. So what we started doing was collecting evidence from customers, and that was really one of the things that changed everything. There were two or three things which changed, let's say, how we got in the door and how far we've got, but let's just concentrate on that for now. So we're collecting evidence. We're then going to the regulator and we're saying, are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? And let's say at first we were fobbed off, but then we had a massive amount of luck, which was Sarah Harrison coming into post, okay? And she sort of said, look, these guys are collecting evidence, and they're collecting evidence from consumers. Let's get them down here. And it would be fair to say that myself, I'm sure Sarah would back this up, that myself and Sarah didn't get on all that well to start with. But I think we grew to respect each other, which is so important. Whereas, right at the very beginning, before we even started Justice For Punters, we tried to open similar dialogue with major members at the Association of British Bookmakers. And you talk about developing a respect, that was the complete opposite. It was, you can get lost, we're not even going to talk to you. And I think there was just this sort of hope that we would disappear and we would, etc., etc. Anyway, complete opposite that. So we're in the door, and we just had a couple of meetings about general things, minimum bet law, terms and conditions, but most important for them at that point was the terms and conditions. And I compiled a list of unfair terms and conditions for them and the Competition and Markets Authority. I have to say that was not difficult. It didn't take hours, because even though some of the terms and conditions have been slightly improved now, there isn't an online bookmaker that has a set of terms and conditions that would stand up in a court of law. So it's not difficult actually doing that. But the CMA, to be fair, because they'd never really been involved in gambling, were rather taken aback. And they said, well, Brian, all 10 that you've sent here are all illegal because they're all unfair. And so we began to develop this relationship by collecting and providing evidence. But the relationship is not easy. All of us think it's important to be inside the doors of the Gambling Commission, but we will never be and never become their PR agents. So we do have some difficult times whereby we do have fallouts, we do have big disagreements, but so far in the main so good. But we would like to see things moving much quicker.